Shashwati, Professor Bandyopadhyay has joined.
Yes. Has Snigdha joined?
Yes, ma'am. Snigdha is also joined.
Okay, Snigdha, I saw her few minutes back, but
Hello?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir, you are audible and visible both.
Yes, ma'am. I have joined. Good evening, ma'am.
Snigdha has joined.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we will start.
I think so.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you who are participating in the international webinar on human geography and health, contemporary issue and intersections, organized by the Advanced Research Center in Human Geography, Lady Brabourne College, in collaboration with Postgraduate Department of Geography, Lady Brabourne College. I'm sure that the esteemed speakers of this webinar will highlight on the emerging issues on multidisciplinary health research, which is now has become center stage in research studies. I now request our beloved principal, Professor Shuli Shorkar, to deliver her welcome address. Madam, please.
Thank you, Shashwati. Respected speakers, our resource persons today, respected Shashwati, Academic Director, the Advanced Research Center, Department of Geography, Lady Brabourne College, and also the former head of the department of the Postgraduate Department of Geography, Lady Brabourne College. Respected Dr. Manushi De, the present head of the Department of Geography of our college, and also the coordinator of the center. Respected colleagues, all my colleagues of the Department of Geography, our eminent guests and dignitaries, and our very beloved students. A very good afternoon to you all. It's a wonderful occasion when the Advanced Research Center of Human Geography, Lady Brabourne College, in collaboration with the Postgraduate Department of Geography, Lady Brabourne College, has organized a one-day international webinar on human geography and health, contemporary issues and intersections. And the webinar is being started now. Human geography consists of a number of sub-disciplines, or sub-disciplinary fields, I should say, that focus on different elements of human activity and human organization. Hence, some fundamental parts of human geography are cultural geography, economic geography, health geography, historical geography, political geography, population geography, rural geography, social geography, transport geography, urban geography, and so on. Thus, health geography is a subdiscipline of human geography that deals with the interaction between people and the environment. Health geography views health from a holistic perspective, encompassing society and space, and it conceptualizes the role of place, location, and geography in health, well-being, and disease. There are so many ways that geography and its tools can help in dealing with several diseases through understanding those diseases, their sources, and dynamics. Geographic Information System, or GIS, for example, may be used to track contagion. Mapping of any disease will definitely help to reduce the spread of that disease. Health map can be developed to collect outbreak data from sources like news media. As physical geographers, people may track the changes and patterns of some satellite-derived air quality variables, such as nitrogen dioxide above cities. As the present pandemic has shaken almost every corner of the globe throughout 2020, I would like to specifically point out that COVID-19 pandemic has had profoundly geographical consequences. As the crisis continues to unfold, there is a pressing need for geographers, just like the economists, virologists, sociologists, politicians, etc., to critically examine its fallout. On the whole, human geographers should particularly highlight the diverse theoretical perspectives, methodological approaches, and thematic foci that geographical scholarship can offer to better explain the uneven geographies of COVID-19. But I am not the resource person after all, so I don't want to linger my speech anymore. And we are all eagerly waiting to hear from our very renowned speakers today. I think that lots and lots questions will be raised from our audience today, and lots of their probable answers too are to be provided by our resource persons today, our speakers. And at the end of the webinar, I'm pretty certain that everybody present here will be able to know a lot more new things and a lot more new ways of explaining them. I wish this one-day international webinar organized by the Advanced Research Center and also the Postgraduate Department of Geography of Lady Brevard College every success. Thank you.
Rajastri, put off your mic.
Yes, thank you. We thank Madam Principal for her encouragement and for gracing our seminar with our presence. So our first speaker today is Professor Autoimmune Disease, Department of Anthropology, University of Calcutta. He obtained his BSc, MSc, MPhil and PhD degrees from the University of Calcutta. Professor Bandyopadhyay furthered his knowledge in DNA technology at various institutions, including Harvard University, the Indian Statistical Institute, the Indian Institute of Chemical Biology, as well as the Government of India's Department of Biotechnology. He has been the recipient of several prestigious awards, including Young Scientist Award in 1991 for his contribution in human genetics from the Indian Science Congress, and Outstanding Science Award recipient, Second International Scientist Awards on Engineering, Science and Medicine, Visa Awards 2019. Through his research, Professor Bandyopadhyay has published more than 100 anthropological research papers in national and international journals on medical genetics, evolutionary biology, forensic anthropology, dental anthropology, public health in relation to genes, cytogenetic and anthropometric variables of non-communicable disease, dermatoglyphics in medical and psychiatric disorders, and population genetics and human rights issues of India. He is the member of many prestigious bodies, including the founder member of the Indian National Confederation of Anthropological Research. I now request Professor Bandyopadhyay to deliver his lecture.
Sir, please unmute yourself. So click on the mic button to unmute. Yes. No, sir. It's still off. Sir, we can't hear you. By any chance, I think he has left the meeting. He'll join again soon, I guess.
It's all right now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
It's all right now? Am I visible and audible? Or
Yes,
there
sir.
is any problem still now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me, anybody?
Yes, Professor Bandapadhyay. You are
Audible?
both visible and audible.
Anybody can help me that I am audible or not?
You are
Audible?
audible.
Can you hear me?
You are audible, sir.
Yes, sir. You have audible
Can you
and
hear me? No. Sorry, just wait.
difficulties.
Wait.
Risk factor. Anthropology.
It's all right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So I was trying on a different device. This is an old device I'm working on. I'm working on with the old device. So that is fine that I'm going on. So thank you so much. I'm very much privileged. Very much privileged. Just a point. I'm very much privileged that one of the esteemed college in Kolkata, Lady Brabourne College. I have seen Lady Brabourne College many a time that I'm going to College Street and other. So one of my elder cousin sister was studied in the Lady Brabourne College for the in the 1970s. So it is really an esteemed college. So that will be. I have listened one with Professor Shivli Sarkar, principal, esteemed honorable principal of Lady Brabourne College. So it would be very fine. So if it is possible that I have already talked with Dr. Manashi De, head of the Department of Geography, that it would be very fine. So if everybody is happy with this anthropology performance here, so that will be a plea for me that if it is possible, this is a request to the principal that whether it would be possible to open up the anthropology honors in Lady Brabourne College. So again, I'm very much happy and very much glad that Rajashree Banerjee has told a very kind words. And I find a person here. I feel that she can remember me, Dr. Shashwati Mukherjee. Shashwati, I feel that you can recognize me, right? So you
I
have
think
been.
I can recognize you.
Yes, because we have been here and we have made a lot of time in the
Yes.
Baligan Science
Thanks,
College,
Colin.
right? In the
Yes, I remember.
yes, in the canteen, right? I
Yes.
was a student and you have been the research scholar, and after that I was doing PhD and you have been in the service, right?
Yes.
So I find
Yes.
you. This
Thank you
is
so
so
much.
happy moments. This
Yes.
is so happy moment, Shashwati. I see you for this time again. So if it is possible, if you come up here in the geography department, please do,
Definitely, I'll meet you.
please definitely you do call me, right? So I'll meet you. So after a long time, I
Oh,
didn't know that you will be here, right? So it is very
okay.
nice to see you.
Okay.
So without
Yes.
going in the details of this, will be going on because this is a kind of physical distancing. We are not making any kind of social distancing. So this is webinars are the part of our life. So I basically don't like this type of things in the class, but still we have to do this one. So now with this particular note that I have already given my choices that what to speak on in this particular webinar when I was cordially invited, I have given 2-3 options, maybe 4-5 options that what I'm working on in this particular department after my before I was in the Bishop Bharati from 1993 to 2000. Then I come to Calcutta University in anthropology. So I have given 4 or 5 choices. So out of that, might be your departmental committee thought me I'm fit for talking about this particular situation is COVID-19 because of the fact that this is a human geography. So I feel I'm very much comfortable with anthropology because anthropology does have a relationship with the human geography, and one person making a bridge between the anthropology and the geography is a doyen, Professor Nirmal Kumar Bose. I feel that all of you,
Yes.
Nirmal Kumar Bose, he was
Yes.
in anthropology and he was a doyen in geography too. So this is a particular thing that a bridge we can have through the Professor Nirmal Kumar Bose. So without wasting some more time, because I would like to present my short talk with this seminar. Let me share my screen. Can you see this screen? Can you help me, anybody?
Yes.
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 Yes. It is visible.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'll be talking about COVID-19 host risk factors, variation and immune response, and anthropological perspective. So why I have ventured this one in this particular issue, because when I say that variation, and which is honorable principal has already mentioned about this kind of variations and other studies does by already have been done by geography department. So I have taken in the biological response, and definitely I'll talk about something about the social cultural and social cultural perspective, because the subject anthropology is something like that, that it's a biological, it's overall the human science, although the geography is the human science. So I start with a very small thing that all of you we know, that the human history of the past million years has been a long tail of process. So if you go through this one, you can find out there is some human skulls are there. So if you go through very carefully, you will find that the facial portion was high at a time, and then the cranial portions is become bigger and bigger. So this is one way that we can study the human evolution, that we have higher cranial capacities. And what happened with this higher cranial capacities, that is most important. You know that we try to understand the cultural realms with the documentation of the different kind of tools and made by our ancestor. So firstly, it was a facultative bipedalism. It was not erect bipedalism. Facultative means if you want, like the bears sometimes try to stand on. So this is facultative bipedalism. And after that, we got the true bipedalism, and which is really the heel toe movement. So this true bipedalism actually tells the humanness. So true bipedalism is very important. So sometimes I used to cut joke with my students that when I say true bipedalism, I used to ask that whether have you seen any bird? They have also bipedalism. So it must be erect bipedalism. So that is the human nature. So with this facultative bipedalism, that was a very insufficient tools has been there, pebble tools, and you know from your geographic background definitely that old old Y gorge, and that is a very incipient tools. And then the increased brain volume comes up with the microlithic industries, which makes very small tools, and definitely it gives a kind of idea, or it's a kind of impression. Then that is the hand-eye coordination with this brain volume. So what happens with this one? If we just go, this is fine. This is, we are going for biology and some cultural realms. And what would be there? If we think about some social cultural issues. So what we find here, that when the brain size is increasing, before that we have the bipedalism. After that, the brain size is increasing. You can see this is the million years has been given. So this is pretty known right now. It's known by the people who are interested in the human evolution. But what happened with this one? So modification and change in the tool typology, then we find the modification change in biological features, definitely. And then modification change in the subsistence patterns. That is most important. That subsistence patterns from foraging to hunting gathering to pastoral to the incipient agriculture to the settled agriculture. So modification change in the subsistence pattern. So what happened with this one? So change in the social structure and the organization. So that is most important thing. The social structure and organization has been changed, and you will find it that if you think about the small ethnic groups like tribal group, they have some kind of social, although I don't like to use the term tribals, but still So we have to use sometimes that small groups. I would like to go for understanding the ethnic groups, small groups, that I'm meaning that there is endogamy, that marriage among themselves. So change in the social structure and the organization. So this change in social structure and organization leads to livestock farming and the agriculture. So this agriculture, international trade, exotic animals, and increased human encroachment to the wildlife habitats. Why I'm talking about this one, international travel networks and urbanization. Why I'm talking about, because adoption of agriculture supposedly most decisive step towards a better life, but there are some kind of catastrophe in many ways. So one catastrophe we can go for, spillover of the pathogens from animal to human leads to zoonotic disease, and zoonotic disease have been the characteristics of the Anthropocene era. So we am talking about the Anthropocene. That means that we have been the human Anthropocene era. So this Anthropocene era, not all the zoonotic diseases become pandemics, but most of the pandemics are caused by zoonoses. By and large, now we can understand this COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease that came from some kind of animals, and there are some different, and more or less it is known from the bats. So this is the history of the global pandemics. So this is going on with this one. And finally, COVID-19 to 2019 ongoing, still now the death is very high. So COVID-19 is neither the first nor the last, and perhaps not the worst zoonotic pandemic. So definitely we are waiting for some more pandemics. So we have to be very, very much careful. So what we have done really in the past and what we are going to do in the future. So now new zoonotic diseases are emerging and emerging an exponential increasing rate. But one thing is constant, the way of transmission, that is transmitted to humans from zoonosis, and then endogenous human infections disease, then person to person. So there is influenza, there is HIV, there is SARS, MERS, and now is COVID-2. So this is just a kind of classification of the COVID. So I'm not going in details of this classification. This is there in the books. So we have been interested with this one. Why we have been interested? I'm going to unfold this one. Why a person from anthropology is very much interested in COVID-19. That may be interested to the other scientists in the life science, for example, the virologist, for example, the microbiologist, for example, the doctors. So why I'm talking about this one? Because of the fact that, because I see that variations in the immunology and the other things that I would, the variation is one of the major aspect that we study in the human, because anthropology work with evolution, variation, and adaptation. So one form of thing is adaptation. So for this particular area, this is SARS-CoV-2, and you can see the case fatality rate was higher in SARS-CoV, MERS-CoV, and SARS-CoV-2. This is only one thing that hope we have, that case fatality rate is very low if you compare to the SARS-CoV and the MERS-CoV. So that's why we are in a good position right now. The case fatality rate is being low. That is a, what I say, this is a blessing. That is, this is SARS-CoV-2 has a case fatality rate right now is 3.76, and you can see the receptor. So what is that? What that the receptor from where this particular virus will be coming to your body? You can think it as the door. So the door was in SARS-CoV is AC2, and for SARS-CoV-2 is AC2. This is an angiotensin enzyme. I'll talk about these things later on. So these are the two doors, the same, because these are the cousins. You know, this SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 cousins, so they are coming through the same door. Okay, so the transmission of the SARS-CoV-2, but I'm just giving a kind of graphics, and you will see AR means androgen, and this is TMPRSS2. So this particular thing is very much, these two things in your cell is very much important for attracting this SARS-CoV-2 inside your body. Now, this is like a pen drive and USB port. I used to give this particular point. If your body is your desktop and pen drive is the virus, so you have to enter that in a particular point to know what is there, the database in your pen drive. So the thing is this, you need to have this USB port, and if your USB port is not compatible, you are not going to see anything. So that USB port is there, is the AC2, and this TMPRSS2 is very important. And you can see that this is androgen. So now it is clear to you that it has been come up in the media from the time to time, and we have also published paper on that. So why males will be much more possibility of the males, why they are much more affected than the females. So one of the reason I started with this androgen receptor, and these androgens are much more in the human male, any kind of male, this male species have the more androgen receptor than the female. So that is one of the reason that we can start on why the males are much more in the risk situation than the females. So higher increased SCE2, this is very much important. I'll tell you what is SCE2 in a moment. And TMPRSS2, this is a big enzyme expression level, plays a major role in the spread of infection. Right now, I can just remember our honorable principal has already mentioned about disease mapping in the geography. Yes, the disease mapping, we can have this one also in the anthropology. So now, next point, I'll go very fast and very briefly about the new strain, that is NRP1, another host factor responsible for the SARS-CoV-2 entry. So the entry is the same, everything is the same. There is nothing very, very much different than SARS-CoV-1 that we are talking about. Only thing is this particular virus can make infection much more than SARS-CoV one that we are talking about in 2019. Sometimes these people are talking about this SARS-CoV as SARS-CoV 2020. So this has more, this ACE2 is fine, infect the cell, but the much more possibility of much more infection to the people rather than faster than the SARS-CoV. This is only the situation, but the case fatality rate and severity is the same. So why? Because NRP1 has been observed be expressed in the lung cell while and in the olfactory epithelium more abundantly than ACE2. So when we talk about olfactory epithelium, that means that we are talking about the nasal cavity. So the nasal cavities are very much important right now. So we know that that's why we are wearing the mask, that that every time we are wearing the mask. Now we are coming that I was talking about this uh, ACE system. So this ACE system, this is ANG2 and this is ANG17. So I'm not going in the detail of this one. So don't worry about it because these are known by the people. I have learned this one from my friends from hydrology and others. So I have to speak to my students and other platforms. So that's why I have taken this one. So COVID-19 increases the level of vasoconstrictor in the angiotensin type that I say ACE and angiotensin 2 ANG2 system. So if you have more this one ACE2, you see that if you can go with this balance, you will see that more ACE2 that this COVID-19 is worsening. So that is called the vasoconstriction, pro-oxidant, pro-inflammation, pro-fibrosis, and pro-apoptosis. So whenever it is coming up, so you know that vasoconstriction means you are constricting something, pro-oxidant, that you are oxidizing your cells, and inflations and other, which is much more effective in this particular case in COVID-19, which we know after the postmortem from the Italy. So this is COVID-19 is worsening situation, that if you have much more ACE2, and why if you have much more ACE2 in your body, that may be related to your sex, because the thing is this, I'm a male, I have more ACE2, and if the females is a less ACE2, because ACE2 is there in the X chromosome. So the males has X and Y chromosome, while in the females there are X chromosome, but one X chromosome in the females, we know from from the school levels, one X chromosome being inactive always from the 100 cell stage. So we say inactivation of this X chromosome. That's why this is one of the reasons that females are less in the risk factor than this. And I'll tell you definitely about the ACU2 in course of time in this particular webinar. Understanding the COVID-19 are evolving in each passing day. So acute respiratory distress syndrome is the most important thing. So I'm coming to systemic disease. Firstly, the decreased hemoglobin level, coagulopathy, what is the characters, inflammations, and then finally hypoxia, that your red cells become expanding and less oxygen in there in your red cells, and pulmonary thrombosis, that you have some kind of blood blood clotting over there in the thrombosis, and the cytokine storm. I'll talk about the cytokine storm. The cytokine is very good for you, but when there is a storm, this is always, because breeze is good, and if you think about the storm is not good always for us. So this is multiple organ failure. And if you go with this general nervous system, so cell death dysfunction, viral encephalitis, meningitis, endothelitis. So these are the central nervous system, and this is the peripheral nervous system. So you can see the multiple things are going on with the COVID patients. And finally, if you think post-infections, what can be? So immune mediated, so post-infections, I'll definitely come up in the last part of my talk about the post-infections, that we have already suffered with the COVID two infection. So what can happen that we can, if we can go for a kind of extrapolation or simulations, that what can happen, so what is coming up in the different researches. So I'm just making a kind of review of the researches of the COVID-19, if there is any relationship of the anthropology, however. So there is finally, if there is a cytokines storm, then there will be a brain damage. That will be a problem. So you will getting in the media that there will be, ultimately there will be some problem in the brain. So you are coming. So why there is brain? So I try to make some kind of things here. So ACE2 receptors are present in a neural cortex on the brainstem, and the SARS-CoV-2 is able to penetrate the central nervous system directly, like its close cousin of the SARS-CoV-1 that has already, this pandemic is over, but still this kind of ancestor character is still there in case of the SARS-CoV-2. So suggest some way around that this is the viral entry of the host cell. So why this is coming up with this particular thing? So if you can remember, this started in December 2019 in China. And then it is invaded to whole of the world. And then in the March and April, some scientists make some kind of post-mortem, that is the autopsy report that comes from the Italy, suggests these complications are objectively related with the clinical syndromes highlighted a severe course of COVID-19. What is there? So this is pathology associated with the hemolysis, that your blood cell going to be burst, and that is hypoxia, less oxygen, and then thrombosis and hematopoiesis. And that is really the problem that we suffer. So what is happening with this hemoglobin iron metabolism? So this is some two things, CD147. So I'm not going in details of this one, but the thing is, these are the receptor other than the ACE2. What will happen, this CD147 that is there in our immunology? So all vertebrate processes host defense mechanism. So we have host defense mechanism. So why this is going up, that some people can cannot resist the COVID-19. Some people, why does some people are resisting some COVID-19? What is happening? Why there is less people are affected in Northeast India? Why the more people have been affected in the northwestern part of India? So we'll try to make some kind of connections between themselves. So this host mechanism actually there in our blood. So you can understand there in the blood, there is one thing is called plasma, or what we call serum. So that is there in, this is a fluid that is there in our blood, and these all blood have this kind of host mechanism, host defense mechanism, which is called haptoglobin. This haptoglobin is there in the plasma. So we started this one with the review that this is working very nice with the other if it is a natural one. So host defense mechanism, so tissue damage, and then coming to the liver, and this produces the haptoglobin. Finally, it's restoration of iron homeostasis, new HB molecule, because this is a haptoglobin hemoglobin molecule. This is attached together. So what we find, human have three distinct haptoglobin type. One is HP11, one is HP21, and one is HP22. And plasma concentration, if you come up, you see that HP11 has a greater plasma concentration than HP21 and HP22. So this is host mechanism. Now, as a matter of fact, what will be coming up, in which population we get more 1-1, in which population we get more HP21, and in which population we get more HP22. Why I'm talking about? Because I am telling something to the people who are in the human geography. You can understand where the people living with some kind of houses. Why? Because it is depending on the ecology, and also in case of anthropology, that depends on which population they are coming. So the ethnicity does mean something. So on that particular thing I'm talking about, why HP11, some people has HP11 more, some people has HP21 more, some people has HP22 more, on the basis of two kinds of generic allele. One is called HP1 and HP2. And now what will happen if there is no haptoglobin this is not working very well, then it is coming to the decreased hemoglobin level that is dangerous to us, and pulmonary thrombosis, hypoxia, inflammation, cytokine storm, and also T cell proliferation that is not good for us. And then finally is multiple organ failure. And this is cytokine storms are autoimmune disease. So if you have more cytokine, and that comes up as autoimmune disease, that your body is not able to think of which is self and what is non-self. These autoimmune diseases are so much dangerous. This is a final stage of HIV. In that particular case, this is coming up as autoimmune disease, that what is self, it is yours, or it is non-self, is something coming up from the outside. So host and other is not coming up. So this is the problem in the autoimmune disease. So your body is not really in position to fight out if the body cannot recognize I mean, which is self and what is non-self. So body, if your body cells are thinking your own body cells are outsiders, so that they will engulf, so that is a catastrophic situation. So that's why we studied this one. And finally, this is on the we have already communicated this one to the journal Haptoglobin Polymorphism and COVID-19, and this is a preprint. We are waiting for the result, and if the result comes up, definitely I'll share you that what kind of contribution we have done from the anthropology. So for that anti-inflammatory nature, if you can remember, this is the drug. Now I'll come back, not coming back to the point. Now, right now, we have COVID vaccine. But before that, we have medicine. There are some kind of difference between the vaccine and medicine. Firstly, the people fight out, the doctors try to fight out with the anti-inflammatory and coronavirus for that particular thing. Dexamethasone proves first life-saving drug because it is an anti-inflammatory. So now there is vaccine. So I'll just give you some glimpses what the vaccines are there. There are many more questions about the vaccines. I have also more questions, and I'll be very much happy that what I'm thinking about the vaccine, whether you corroborate or you can have some kind of questions about it. So cytokine storm leads to the brain damage. So this is the most important thing I have already mentioned. What is cytokine? So cytokines are category of signaling molecules and regulate the immunity, inflammations, and the hematopoiesis. So when there is a cytokine storm, this is a release of large amount of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and this is storm. And when there is a storm, then it's coming up as autoimmune, that your body are not in position to understand what is self and what is non-self. So the situation will be coming like your own self cells are digested by your own cells. So that is the most important situations coming up in for COVID-19. So recent reports suggested that ACE2 receptor, I have already mentioned, are present in the neural cortex, and the SARS-CoV able to penetrate, I have already mentioned, central nervous system as a close cousin of SARS-CoV-1. Now, I'm coming to the point of epidemiological factors influencing the disease transmission. I feel that already this particular thing has been touched by the principal Professor Shuli Sharkar, that epidemiological factors, the disease mapping. So that is the epidemiological factor influencing the human disease. If you come to that, so this is descriptive epidemiology, where the case reports that we started with, the case report about the COVID case series, and then ecological studies. That is the most important thing. Ecological, which part we are getting more affected individuals. Then we go for cross-sectional studies, then case control, retrospective cohort studies, and prospective cohort studies. And finally, that is there, that in the tip point, we are talking about the randomized clinical study. So we are randomizing that how many people in which populations are getting affected. And finally, we can understand that how much the vaccine will work, or we can go with only the medicine. That is the most crucial point. So with this particular thing, epidemiological studies, that epidemiological factors of the disease transmission, three things are very much important. One is environment, one is agent, and one is host. So I can only give one example right now here about the malaria. So if you think about the malaria, it will be there in the tropical region environment. The agent, the vector, is the mosquito, because if it is not tropical region, so the mosquitoes will not be there. If you think about the sub-zero, for example, the European country, so there is less problem of the malaria than the tropical country like us, Africa. So the agent, the agent will be the mosquito. carrying that Plasmodium vivax or the falciparum, and then infectious disease coming to the host. Now, if I have this particular thing, whether I'll be affected by this one. So again, there is some kind of question. So host risk factor, how much you have the risk factors, and this is also age specific. Definitely, how much the newborn will be affected, how much the middle aged will be affected, how much the elderly people will be affected, and the gender specific. Definitely, I have already mentioned about the gender specificity about the COVID-19. I have told you, and it has been come up to the media, and we have also published the paper with the reason why. So I'll tell about this reason. Definitely, the gender specific, that the males are having much more risk factors, and also the ethnic specific. This particular thing is very, very much interesting factor for anthropology. I'll definitely share with you in this particular webinar. I used to share this one with all kinds of situation, because the ethnic specificity is very much important. Just for an example, if I think about the morphology of a particular people, so if you find someone have a epicanthic fold in the eye. So epicanthic fold in the eye, that is found in the Mongoloid population. So this is very ethnic specific. If you think about the hair form, if it is straight hair, so I'm not talking about the salon made straight hair, I'm talking about the natural straight hair. So it is always ethnic specific, that we can find out these people are coming from there. If you get woolly hair, thick hip-hearted lip, then you can think these people might be coming from Africa and other kind of, by this way the morphology. So I'm talking about this ethnic specific. So the anthropological consideration, definitely why anthropology should take this particular issue in the COVID-19, because I have already mentioned COVID-19 and epidemiological host genetic appraisal. We have published in Asian Journal of Medical Sciences. It has been read a lot of time, and we published in the 1st May. So these are my co-authors. So these are all of my students. I'm very much, grateful to them that they have taken the endeavor cooperation with us to publish this thing. And finally, this is in praise that we are talking about. We are also submitted a manuscript, and this is in the praise that socioeconomic status, iron deficiency, anemia, and COVID-19 disease burden and appraisal. So when we are starting this one, we find some kind of interesting feature. I definitely share, because it is in praise. So that will be coming up in the March 2021. So aging, I start with the aging risk factors of the COVID-19. And if you go the aging with the aging, so all are the review papers that we have tracked one from the COVID trackers and different papers, reviews, first-hand papers, primary data, secondary data. That is the age groups are coming up. So what we find, share of confirmed cases and share of death. So what we find, that share of death, despite being only 31% of the total number of infection, people aged 60 plus from a large chunk of death. So this is again a point about how epidemiological factor uses this age specific characters. So ACE2 expressions, I have already mentioned, increase by approximately 1.2 times in every 10 years of increase of age, partly explained elderly are more susceptible to the SARS-CoV-2 than children. Besides the ACE2, I have already mentioned TMPRSS2 expression, which gives the androgen and lower in the children, because until puberty, boy as well as girls possess a little androgen. So now the media from the very beginning, we are finding out this is a very low risk to the children and high risk to the elderly people. So I feel that I could able to explain this one, why it is possible that the newborns or the child has less prevalence or less affected chance, risk factors for this COVID-19, and males at higher risk. Why? The possible reasons. So I said ACE2. Firstly, ACE2 located in the X chromosome, I have already mentioned, and X chromosome is a very important factor for sex determination. So all we know, XY male, XX female. So X inactivation, I have already mechanism might skew towards the less SARS-CoV-2 binding prone allele, because all the females, mammalian females, one X chromosome being inactive. That is known as Leo hypothesis, or the bar body, that we do this kind of work in our laboratory, and this is very interesting features are there. So this is not actually the platform there are interesting. If I get anytime possibility, definitely I share with this one. Another thing is the innate immune response, sex hormones like estrogen. So this is again the important point for the females, as long as there is menarche. So estrogen sludge of surge of estrogens are there, and that's why, you know, not only the COVID-19, if you think about the cardiovascular disease or type 2 diabetes, also having a very lower risk and lower prevalence in the females within the menarche and the menopause. And when the menopause comes up, this is triggering up so high, it's equal to, almost equal to the males. And also the sex chromosome like androgen, so I have already mentioned TMPRSS2, that is less in case of, if you get these arrows, you will find which is high, which is low in case of the males. So TMPRS is definitely high in case of the males and low in case of the females. And the hemoglobin concentration, I'm sorry, so if I go to if I go there. So hemoglobin concentration, so pre-existing comorbidities are very much important in case of the male. So comorbidities, why? Because behavioral factors, smoking, alcohols, and other kind of factors are very, I mean, frequent in case of the males. I'm not talking about the European system, but I'm talking about this, our system, because I'm talking from our country, India. So higher androgen increases the TMPRSS susceptibility to the COVID-19, irrespective of the sex. So this is just a kind of photo, I mean, a kind of reactions and other kind of thing. But the association of SARS-CoV-2 susceptibility and androgen dependent expression on the TMPRSS2, it comes up higher androgen expression and androgenism. So what we find that is, if there is higher androgen, there is a chance of this kind of alopecia in the male. So this is a male pattern hair loss, and this is a female pattern hair loss. And sometimes I feel in the media it is came up that you have already find it out that the people having less hair or having baldness are more risk in the COVID-19. Although I do not know the whole true picture whether this is coming up with really, but might be this is one of the reasons that more androgen can have alopecia, the hair loss, than the less androgen in the males. And also this gives the androgen alopecia, polycystic ovarian syndrome in case of the female. If there is more androgen, by and large this is known to everybody that if it is polycystic ovarian syndrome, there will be the ovary carrying this kind of androgenic cyst. So the people having polycystic ovarian syndrome are not people, the women, definitely women, because I'm talking about ovarian syndrome, so are much more in risk if there is polycystic ovarian syndrome in the female, and also benign prostatic hyperplasia. So finally, what we wanted to make a kind of a message that the prostate cancer patient receiving androgen deprivation therapy is a significantly lower risk, because androgen deprivation theory that prostate cancer patient should not be given more androgen. So that is, I mean, opposite to the androgen. So they have the lower, significantly lower risk. The research said that is significantly lower risk. And also the ethnic differences prevails, because India, although India is a third place as on August 2020. So when I was preparing this one, I could not come up with the current issue, but in the current there is definitely less frequency on the basis of confirmed cases, but case fatality rate in India is very low. So case fatality rate means what we find in case of Europe, America. So case fatality rate was very high. So whoever been affected have a higher chance of death. So in comparison to the worldwide prevalence, reason underlying this is the CFR both between the within and population remain uncertain, and they are likely to be multifactorial and driven by the combination of genetic factors that I have already mentioned, genetic factors and epigenetic factors. So genetic factors I'm talking about right now. I am coming to my subject because anthropology has four subdisciplines. I'll definitely come up, and every subdiscipline has some point of implication, some point of importance. So the genetic factors we study in the biological anthropology, and all the epigenetic factors we study in the social cultural anthropology. For example, which population takes smokes much more, which population take what kind of diet. For example, some population takes this kind of food, some population doesn't take this kind of food, some populations are working in that way. So the socialization processes of these are called triggering up this particular disease with these epigenetic factors. So the triggering up of it was benign or latent, now it's triggering up for a disease is through by the epigenetic factors. So people are trying to understand what is epigenetic factor behind the genetic factors. So one good example right now, just for a moment, I can give you that is recently our very favorite Saurabh Ganguly has affected with this he was having a good lifestyle. So this was the genetic factor. So we cannot say anything to the Saurav Ganguly about the lifestyles. He is not a smoker, not take alcohol regularly, and having a fitness. So why this particular person have to have 3 stents and the cardiovascular disease? So definitely there is genetic factors and anthropological considerations. So we have gone through these variation studies, and we have this is in the press. And why anthropology? Because in anthropology we do take host risk factors. So program design formative research in anthropology, then response investigation and interpretation, and finally what we go for event analysis and post hoc assessment. What I am talking right now in front of you, that actually we are doing a event analysis and the post hoc assessment. So beforehand, we can go to the field and make the program design and formative research, and then response, investigation, and interpretation. Finally, we give some kind of, simulation, prospective things in anthropology. So why anthropology? A few many publication on anthropology need to public health, because this COVID-19 is a public health, a game changer to the importance of anthropology in the public health intervention. So it has been taken into consideration in case of there is tendency to humanitarian world. So this has been taken in the grant award. You can see health sector anthropology, and also before that in 1952 public health has been taken and its contribution to the public health in anthropology. And finally anthropology in public health emergencies, this is come up in the 2017, that anthropology in public health emergencies, what is anthropology good for? So whenever we are doing any kind of research, our goal is to have the societal benefit. So anthropology, this is a all together domain. So social cultural anthropology can work with the sociology and other social sciences, biological anthropology with other biological subjects, life sciences, archaeology. This is very much important with the geography and geology, geomorphology. And finally, we have linguistic anthropology. Perhaps this is very much important in our subject right now. The different kind of linguistic group, they have different kind of culture, they have different kind of socialization effect. So although this is not right the platform that I can talk about, but I have interest. If I have the right platform, definitely I'll talk about this one. I have interest on this linguistic anthropology and holistic approach of the anthropology. So sometimes you have found that there is, I'm talking about the human variation. So sometimes it has been come up in the media that the people having in the O blood group are less risk factors with the COVID-19. Why? Because O blood type of blood group, we know that there is no antigen. That's why these 0 and O. So the immune types of the people with the blood type O already have antibodies for both A and B. Their bodies more equipped to identify foreign proteins. So this O type who has no antigen but the two antibodies, so they are a bit ahead to identify these people, identify the foreign antibody, because it has both of the antibodies like A and B, but there is no antigen. So I do not know, the people are making kind of prevalence features, epidemiological studies, and definitely they got some kind of significant relationship that the risk factor and the COVID-19 with the blood group. Okay, so genetic variants I have already mentioned about the ACE2 and the ACE1, SARS-CoV-2, and higher CFR rate in the Europe. So why I'm talking about, because these DD genotypes in the ACE1, I'm just giving you, not go through this one, just taking in a point of understanding that these DD genotypes are much more having the risk of the COVID-19. And if you screen this DD genotype, you will find the northwestern region of India like Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and Gujarat have more DD genotype people, while if you come to the northeastern India, you will find more people with II genotype. That's insertion and deletion. So the two types are there. What is insertion? Something is there in the gene, inserted, and deleted. Some part is deleted. If there is deleted part, so they are much more risk. And if you go to the COVID tracker, still now you will find in the northwestern part of India, there are much more DD phenotype. And if you go to the Europe, you will again find that much more DD genotype than the eastern part of the world. Now, this is an open story to us. Now, this is our assumption. Why there is much more people are affected in European country than the Asian country. I have started this one. Might be this host genetics we have on the basis of ethnicity. So definitely these are the issue that we can think about the human variation, why I'm talking about the COVID-19, why a person from the anthropology, I'm speaking like this, because we are watching and observing this kind of thing, and we have given our understanding. So study tries to understand the culprit mechanism of the observed differential of the COVID-19. So that is epigenetic risk factors. I said genetic, one is epigenetic risk factors. So what would be the epigenetic risk factors? By and large, one is socioeconomic status, where we can find out the nutritional status, obesity and the comorbidities. Yes, obesity is sometimes a socioeconomic status, and comorbidities, I'm talking about hypertension if you have type 2 diabetes, and demographic structures are very important, that how many people are aged and how many people are not aged. So population density is one of the important factor. Again, I'm lucky, I'm speaking to the people of the human geography who can understand the population density factor, co-residency factor, and the urbanization. So these are the epigenetic factors that can make model the genetic factors. So one is the socioeconomic status, so iron deficiency and anemia and COVID-19. So we find in iron homeostasis imbalance, what we find, if there is less iron, um, iron deficiency anemia, we find a really interesting feature. I'm just going to the next slide and you will find the map. This is very interesting feature. We have found that uh, this one, if you go with this one, iron deficiency anemia prone region, relatively low CFR by the COVID-19 and COVID-19 tracker. You will find in South America, this is his fertility rate is 4.04 and this is 4.60. This is US and the South America. And if you come to the Europe, it is 7.87, and Africa, it's significantly lesser. You can see that 2.42. If you come to India's case fatality rate, that how many people has this COVID and got death, is 2.87, and China it is 5.39. And these are the regions you see the acute anemia deficiency prone region. So this is normal and this is severe. You can see these are the severe region. This is really amazing that whether socioeconomic conditions and iron deficiency anemia making our globe divided with this, affected with COVID-19 or not, with particular this thing, assumption developed country denotes by the higher socioeconomic status condition, normal hemoglobin level possible, a great affected condition of the COVID-19 than the anemic endemic region. So that's why I have already mentioned. So we have reported this one, and we are very much happy that they have accepted our paper. I will share you in course of time. So obesity, malnutrition driven comorbidities are also very much important. So starting from the genetics, hormones, socioeconomic status, physical activity, we know that environment and psychological conditions. So this is called respiratory dysfunction. So there are two types of obesity. One's called apple android and one is pear gynoid. So definitely the obesity measures, if you think about the males and females, the obesity measures are different, and within the sex and between the sex, this is the obesity measures are different. And what we find very interesting, that underlying conditions with this obesity status, underlying condition 40.5% have the hospitalization, no underlying condition, only 9%. So if you go this one, you'll find that obesity does make some sense with this COVID-19 affected. Demographic structure of the population, I know the time is very much limited. I'm not going in the details of the demographic, just I'm going for the graphics only. The demographic structure of the population, what we find is this is North American, this is Italian 2019, Brazilian, and you see in India, and this is China. So definitely the demographic structure are making some kind of differences. So mapping the age-related spatial clustering in both within and across countries can improve the hospital and critical care forecasts. What we'll find, if it is a dome shaped and if it is not like, so we have more mean age people we have in India is 30 point something, while in other population is all high age people. That might be one of the reason. I have already mentioned that age is something factor for the COVID-19. So might be this is one of the reason I have already mentioned. In India 2.04%, and death rate, if you go to the China, it will be 5.47. And if you think about just a moment, if you think about North America 3.26, and if Italy is 14.13, and you see the demographic features are totally different. So this is again an anthropological issues, and not only anthropological issues, I feel the human geographer also can observe this kind of thing with a different kind of diseases. So it has been started with the Wuhan to Detroit. So one point of interesting, that visitors and the tourists, diverse global population, dense, so that is migration. So no places are seems to be immune till now except Northeast India, where the number of cases are still relatively lower than other counterparts, might be due to the lowest population density per square kilometer. Let us see what happens really. If you go to the population pandemic risk factor with the population density, these are the population density and recover case fatality rate and number of recovery. So eastern region is recovery rate is very high still now. And if you go to the west, this is the population density per square kilometer. You see that in eastern region it is 625, but the recovery rate is very high. So why it is happening on? So must be with this population density, there is host risk factors. So this host risk factors, we are talking about our ancestry, that we are the Bengali population, maybe the Odia population, maybe a Meghalaya population. So the ancestry is very much important of the genetics. So co-residency pattern, again, this is very important to us because this residency pattern is different in India than other than Europe. So in European country, what we find that is a nuclear family or together something like this. But the thing is this in Indian intrafamilial transmissions are very much observable because of the fact that characterize a three generation in a single household. So there will be older people, newborn people. So there will be chance of the co-residency pattern of this particular pandemic. There is always a chance, but still such contacts are less in China, negligible in Europe and America. But still, why India is showing a lower rate? Is it for the health facilities or we have anything host we have inside that we have something to combat with the COVID-19? So urbanization and migration, yes, urbanization and migration, global mega cities, like you can understand. So India is a tip of iceberg. Actually, we do not know really that COVID-19 outbreak, but still we are in position right now to think about this is the rate is coming down. This is no way that we cannot, we cannot, we can say that this is coming down. So COVID-19 effect of variation among the population. So we can go with the immunity. So the immunity there are, I'm not going in details of the immunity because it will be a bigger one. So adaptive immunity. So one is natural immunity, that this is more or less conserved to all population. Now coming to the artificial immunity that we have going right now, we will be happy to note that with the vaccines came to India. So this is artificial immunity. One is natural immunity that we have. I am again posing that one to you, that this natural immunity we have in Indian population, but this is very different in the northeast and the eastern population, southern part, because we have different ethnicity, different linguistic group. So this is naturally for the migration of different parts of the ethnic group to India. So HLA is very much important. Sometimes you have gone through the HLA in the media. HLA is human leukocyte antigen. There are three classes, 1, 2, 3. But this particular thing is important. You can find out that people are thinking about these are the protective allele. You can see the higher frequency in Indian and several African population. Whilst these risk alleles are there in the East Asian descent, Indian and African populations, high mortality in the COVID-19 in China. So these are the risk allele and these are the protective allele. So I'm very much happy to share that with the University of Vienna. We are trying to make a collaboration with this risk allele of the HLA, not only for the COVID-19, but there are some kind of disease that we are thinking about that we try to make in collaboration. So I mean, this is on the pipeline. If it is there, definitely I'll share to you, all of you people, that we can do this kind of work with anthropology, with the human genetics population. So although the USA people of Africa descent have been hardest hit in the indicates the genetic factors interacts with the several factors too. So what is vaccination? Now the most important thing is this, people are thinking about the vaccination, although I'm not going in details. I'm the last part in the last session of my talk. So what is vaccination? The people are thinking about why should we take the vaccine, should we not take the vaccine, because it is already been given you the declaration. If you want to take the vaccine, you can take, and if you don't want to take, but which vaccine you should take, that has to be given a kind of green signal, already been given the green signal by the government of India. So this is done by the dead microorganism and genetically engineered antigen. So I'm going very fast with this one. I feel that you will like to see this one, how this is done. So types of vaccines, so DNA and RNA, live attenuated. So this is live attenuated, not dead, not live. So how it works? So you don't go with the details with this one. You just come down that existing examples with this DNA, RNA, none. So live attenuated, it's already been practiced in case of measles, mumps, and rubella and chicken pox. And inactivated kind of vaccine, it is already been used in case of polio and other human papilloma virus and Ebola and veterinary medicine. But group testing, this approach to COVID-19, so you can find out something that we have already mentioned, like codagenics, for example, University of Oxford. You can see that which kind of technique the people has been taken. So which one that you are taking. If you take codagenic, so you are live attenuated. If you are taking viral vector for the University of Oxford. Now, the thing is this, it is on the trial, but this is not the time to tell you. So always it is not possible to make the trial, but there are technology. I'm telling you that you don't need the trial. It's called silica gel technique that you don't need the in the human itself. You can go with a trial with, I mean, tissues. So that will be the coming up for the future research in the vaccinations. So majority of the COVID-19 vaccines in clinical trials involve next generation platform genetic ELISA in silico model method, because you are not always getting this next. So how long you will be there to take a vaccine? So the people who are trying to work the vaccine faster method. So this is being a faster method that the people definitely will try to understand the vaccine in the faster method. So most efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine because of the population with a different genetic background. So why efficacy? If you can include most of the population. Now we are in the lucky phase. You can see that 99.38% that we can make the population coverage. So population coverage is important, but you see, if you go to the United Arab Emirates, you see only 5.72% are the population coverage. So the genetic background. So if you have different kind of genetic backgrounds, you need to have a population coverage. But in India, we are lucky that our population coverage is 99.38%. Now, selected epitopes. So I'm not going in the epitopes. These are some kind of, immunological factors we don't want, but we are in a good position that 99% in the population coverage. So most importantly, whether you are using the vaccine, it will work or not. Sometimes we get the vaccine failure. Why there is vaccine failure? Because typhoid vaccine gets failed. So when you are making vaccine, because of the fact that the genes that take the vaccine. So you have to have that gene that to accept that vaccine. So that is particularly the point. So whether the vaccine will work all together to all the people with this particular vaccine, this is again a total question. But I'm not going to give you any kind of idea whether any of you, if you ask me that whether I will take vaccine, I will be keep mum, because I do not know about it. And if you ask me whether I'm going to take vaccine, so I will slowly try to understand whether I should take vaccine or not, or better is medicine. Okay, enough though it's one virus can cause all different kinds of disease in the people, and even the encompasses a long-term impact in the people's health. So
Professor
what?
Bandyopadhyay.
Yes, I'm taking more
Professor
time. Yes, I'm more
We
time
have
taking
a
more.
speaker from USA.
Oh
We
yes,
have a speaker from USA. So she
yes.
has a time limit,
Okay,
You
I'm just making
kindly,
it finish right
yeah.
now. So what is the impact? The mental illness
Okay,
impact.
thank
You
you.
know that education system impact. COVID-19 education system has an impact. So mental health is an impact. So the point is concluding. I'm come to the concluding. So these are the genetic factors and these are the epigenetic factors. So we have taken these two things and we try to understand on the COVID-19. And finally, prevention is better than cure. And thank you so much being here, and you have given me some time. Definitely there are some time of there is some time constraint. So finally, these are my feedback. One can give me the email for the feedback here. And finally, what I written here, pokai muchu, because of the fact that I feel it in the Chinese that all will be safe one time. Thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Professor Bandyopadhyay. And because we are on a tight schedule right now, so we will be taking the questions at the end of the three lectures. And thank you very much for your very opportune and timely and very relevant talk today. So we will be going on to the next speaker. That is our next speaker today is Dr. Devarjana Ghosh, PhD in Geography from the University of Minnesota, MPhil in Population Studies, and MA in Urban Development from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. Dr. Debarchana Ghosh is currently an Associate Professor of Geography at the University of Connecticut. She is also Principal Investigator of the Institute on Collaboration for Health Intervention and Policy and affiliated with Yale University's Center for Interdisciplinary Research on AIDS. As a health geographer, Debarchana's request and teaching are primarily focused on the reciprocal relationship between place and health, where place is a multidimensional unit connecting people or vulnerable population, things or facilitators and barriers, and the environment. Central to this is a diverse yet complementary skill set, including GIS, spatial statistics, social network analysis, and mHealth or mobile health. Dr. Ghosh's ultimate goal is to conduct spatial behavioral interventions where research findings are translated to practice. I request Dr. Ghosh to deliver a speech now.
Good evening, everyone. Can you see and hear me properly?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay.
You're audible, Debarchana.
Great. Great.
We are both audible and visible.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Rajashree, and a great talk by our first speaker, Dr. Bandyopadhyay. He has given a lot of comprehensive information on COVID-19 and sets up a good first talk where many of the items that he talked about, probably I will go over that too in my talk. So with that, let me share my screen. Is my PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Great. Great. So I just would like to start. Let me go to the presentation mode here. Yep. So I just like to start by thanking the principal, Dr. Shivli Sharkar of Lady Bourbon College, as well as Dr. Shashwati Mukherjee and Assistant Professor Rajashree for inviting me for this opportunity to share my research at this international webinar. It is a special moment for me to be here because I was a student at the Lady Bourbon College right after my secondary education. So I was admitted to Lady Bourbon in year 1995 for my high secondary education, where geography was one of my main subjects. So that's where my journey with geography started. Mostly a love affair. It could be hate at some point, where too much geography was, we were studying too much, but mostly it has been an extraordinary journey, learning different aspects of geography, starting from Lady Bourbon College. So it's a special moment for me today, after, I guess, almost 25 years. Sheesh, it's a long time that I am presenting here again. Hopefully it would have been nice to be in the person, but we are all in this living through the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what we have to do now, is do this remote and online webinars and lectures. But it would have been a doubly more exciting moment for me to be at present in Lady Bourbon College and giving this webinar. So almost 25 years fast forwarding from the discipline of geography, I have been more into health geography. And as Dr. Bandyopadhyay was talking about, I was curious that he was using the term social and cultural anthropology and not medical anthropology. I think the medical anthropology, medical sociology, and medical and health geography are kind of all overlapping subdisciplines of social science, which connects very well with public health and social work. So it's a nice way to move now from medical anthropology, from the first speaker, where I'm going to talk about today on the connected technologies for smarter geographical health research. So that's my topic today. And just a little background. perhaps we have all experienced in a very exponential speed how these connected technologies have influenced our lives. We remember our time where we didn't have any cell phones, and then we had very heavy brick-like looking cell phones, or cell phones which look like the TV remote, and with a very fast forward time we have come to flip phones, and now we have smartphones which are of varying sizes and shapes and designs and whatnot. So there are array of these technologies, and then we have iPads, smartwatches, smart pill boxes, or rather I would say smart tablet boxes, where some of those are also used in intervention research, health intervention research as well. Along with that, we also have these platforms like the Twitter, Facebook, and I cannot not mention WhatsApp in these kinds of webinars, where all these different platforms has changed our lives significantly. So how does these technologies also help in research, or do they at all help in research? So it's one of my aspect of my current research, where I look at the influence of these technologies in different kinds of data collections, in different health interventions. And what I'm going to do in today's webinar is to just give some brief and short examples of these usage of these technologies in our research, and hopefully our research is going to sound more smarter. But of course, when we become more smarter, it comes with some of the caveats and some of the challenges as well. So we should be also cognizant about that. In all these technologies, there is one integral feature, which is the Global Positioning System, or the GPS, that is inbuilt. Some of us are aware, or some of us are unaware that we have these inbuilt GPS units in many of these connected technologies, and hence they are named connected or smart technologies, where we have this location data. And when we have this location data, that becomes very much exciting and a resource for geographers in all subdisciplines of geographers, whether it is a health geographer, or a planning person, or a climate person, or even a developmental geography. So all these location data can be used in many innovative ways. So this location feature brings these technologies to us and to our research. So National Geospatial Advisory Committee has been formed to kind of oversee how these technologies are affecting the geospatial landscape. And in doing that, they have identified some overarching trends here. So for example, you have this, over the years, with the development of the communication technology, we have seen this miniaturization of technology, or in other words, the sizes have gone really small. They're much more user friendly. They can be used in other appliances, and technology can be used. So it's become really small. It can fit in our bags and purses and not that big. So it's really user friendly. It can be used in a very easy way for research as well. Then it has the ability to churn out or produce real-time spatiotemporal data, and lots of data. And that goes into the field of big data now, which you would hear that term from information technology as well. Then proliferation of new mobile geospatial sensor. Many health studies are being conducted now, where a sensor, by touch sensation, many data are collected. For example, many of the trackers that we wear, like the Fitbit and things like that, they have this ability to monitor your heart rate. They have a sensor technology. They could sense the heart rate. You can take the ECG and whatnot. So things are really moving very fast, and there are opportunities for us to tap onto that those features. Then we have expanding wireless and web networks and advances in computing speed. Many of the computers are very fast now. Remember those days where we had those old-looking towers to very sleek computers now on. So with these trends, it is significantly impacting our geospatial analysis. And geospatial analysis has really gone cross-cutting discipline now, from geography to health to planning to climate as well. So geospatial landscape does not only include into geography anymore. And primarily due to these features of real-time spatial and spatiotemporal data, big data, and another offshoot from there is the data confidentiality and privacy. A big research area is developing from there. When all this data are created, how do we wrap around our thought, wrap around our research, and try to maintain the data confidentiality and privacy of the consumers who are using these technology and also producing that data. Then you have the infrastructure. Data analytics is a big field here. Then access to technology, who have access, who does not have access. This is where social and critical geography and kind of anthropology will also come in. And then you have the workforce. This workforce is very important, and perhaps not the scope of today's webinar, but I just want to add one or two sentences here, that all these 4 points that we have at the top, it's very exciting, but many of us that we teach our students, we train our students, we could do that, but it is also important for us to make them think critically and analyze critically, and interpretation. It's not only how and click the buttons, do the analysis, and that's it. But what does it mean in terms of interpretation? What does it mean for our people? What does it mean for our society? How do we critically analyze all this data, all this analysis? And that's, I think, more where I am taking my my research and teaching, where I could instill more spatial and critical thinking in terms of when I talk to students nowadays. So with that brief background, I'm going to talk about 2 example studies where we're going to measure how connected technologies can be measured neighborhood. And this is where Dr. Bandapadhyay talked about this environment that we have around us. It is not only our genetic characteristics which makes us prone or not prone to a disease, but also what we have around us. So how can we measure our neighborhood? And then the second study is how can we measure our green space? And green space is very important in different subdisciplines of geography. Most of my studies are in collaboration with my students, and I will talk about that shortly. And if I have time, I will go over 2 applied visualizations using the recent technologies. One is the COVID-19 tracker that I'm the primary investigator for the state of Connecticut and for University of Connecticut. It's not new. You have seen these trackers from Johns Hopkins University to many countries. India has several good trackers as well. But if I have time, I'll just go through some of the new things what we're doing. But I'm also interested in talking about one of my very recent research, which is actually based in Kolkata, where I'm looking into the synergy or the overlap of health and human rights. And this is where medical anthropology also comes in, that how health geography can overlap with law and human rights, and we can study the accessibility for transgender population, or a population which have diverse and overlapping non-binary gender identities. It's not only transgender, it is Hijra, and all other communities are having issues in their rights and access to health in Kolkata particularly. So with that, I'm going to start with this first topic here, or the first example study, which is how to measure a neighborhood. And we use the term neighborhood in different synonyms as well, depending upon which kind of hat I wear on a particular day, whether I'm talking to health researchers or I'm talking to medical sociologies. So geographical effects, contextual, ecological effects, environmental effects. But it is very important, and Dr. Bandyopadhyay talked about part of it, so I'm not going to go in detail. So basically, we have some of our genetic or individual characteristics, and it's very interesting that he brought about Shourab Ganguly's health situation now. He's genetically, like in terms of his health behavior, what he has around him in terms of exposure is pretty good. However, it seemed like he's predisposed to some individual characteristics. So it is a combination of both of our individual characteristics of who we are and also our neighborhood characteristics of where we live, where we hang out with, what kind of physical activity we do, what kind of awareness we have, what kind of friends and family members we have, because we also tend to imbibe our health behavior and health-seeking behavior from them as well. So and that is the neighborhood and ecology and environmental that all these subdisciplines of anthropology, sociology, and geography are really collaborating with public health researchers. And we have a very age-old theoretical framework called the social ecological model, which has been studied by Yuri Bonfrenbenner. It's a mouthful last name to pronounce. And he talked about this social ecological model where you have several of these overlapping and embedded factors which leads to a particular health outcome. Over this model, many researchers over the years have made variants of this model. And then in the recent time, CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, have also came up with this term called exposome, which is nothing new, but rather they're using the word exposome, similar to what environmental factors that we all talk about. So neighborhood is really very important. So in research, how did we measure neighborhood over the years? It's not new. We have been doing this for many years. So on the left, I have a map where I have the poverty rate measured by the census tracts in the Washington, D.C. So we have used these static administrative units to define our neighborhood. And on the right, we have the poverty by wards in Delhi. You can think of districts-wise, you can see of sub-district, you can go further down, but these are still static administrative units that are being developed for some other purposes, for administration work, but researchers have used these units to describe their neighborhoods. And things are going well, but we can improve, we can be smarter. So we have used GIS to measure neighborhood in different ways. So for example, imagine this is from a study where GIS was used to do an obesity study, and they were showing how different ways you can measure neighborhood. So let's imagine this is where the person lives and this is its administrative unit. Then you could do by GIS a circular buffer, a Euclidean distance. But you could also have a network buffer where you can say, well, how far can I go in a 2-kilometer radius from my home or from the geometric centroid of where in my district. Then you can also talk about this newer way of measuring neighborhood where you have the activity space. Our exposure to neighborhood doesn't only restrict to our home. Imagine, we live in a home, we wake up, we go to work, we pick up our kids from their school and whatnot, their extracurricular activities, we have our evening leisure time, we meet friends and we come back home. So we kind of have a different activities, daily, regular, typical activities that we move along different exposure areas. So that could be also a different, a new way of measuring neighborhoods. So over the years, we moved from these static administrative units to some other way of thinking about neighborhood using GIS, but this connected technologies can help us move into the next step, where we could really use these technologies to collect more nuanced, more human-centered, more real-time and space data to see how we are interacting in our different phases of our daytime, nighttime with our environment. These are very detailed, realistic, individual, and oriented. These are hopefully we would consider this as a better measure of neighborhoods. So in one of my study, which is based in Washington, DC, our study population is HIV positive individuals who also have substance use. So it's a really difficult population to work with. And we're looking at how we could improve their medicine intake, the antiviral, retroviral therapies, because there is no cure to HIV. We only have to keep their viral suppression down, and hopefully that they will become very, very less transmissible if they keep on to their disease and they will not transmit in their community. So me as a health geographer in that team, and we have many other, we have psychologists, we have health interventionists in that team. My role is to see how the geographical and the social network factors are acting as their barriers or facilitators in their medicine intake. And in doing that, I am trying to see what do they have in their neighborhood or their environment, which is kind of helping them or not helping them in kind of going to receive their medicines, or maybe they're forgetting to go to their to pick up their medicines. Maybe they don't have transportation, or they're too much under the drug effect, so they completely forgot about that they had a doctor's appointment. So these are some of the factors that I'm trying to think out how they are helping or not helping in their medicine intake. In doing that, I have used cell phones and a ComCare service, which is a real-time data collection mechanism in getting their neighborhood data. So we had a relatively bigger budget. I was lucky to be part of this project where we had the budget to give them very cheap cell phones to each of our study participants. Now, cell phones over the years have become really cheap. The smartphones, not the Apple phones, but the standard ones. The expensive part was the data plan. But we gave all that to our study participants, and they were collecting real-time data as they were moving from each part of their life, from the time they're waking up, from their sleep at home to their work, or perhaps when they were using drugs, or perhaps when they were involved in some risky behaviors of injection drug use as well, which would augment the transmission of the HIV. So we had these surveys of every 14 days where we collected data on their economic and social and cultural activities, their healthcare, their behavior of using drugs, and so on and so forth. But each of them had this latitude and longitude, or in other words, the X and Y coordinates, which allowed me and my team to map out their activity spaces and to understand how they're moving and how far they're moving. So these are some of the selected questions that I have on the left. I'll just pause for a while here and I will let you read these questions. Like, for example, where are you now, and so on and so forth. And you can see how real time and at the moment data we can collect. And all this data collected was directly going from the phone to a cloud service where we had the latitude and longitude already recorded. We cut it out, this intermediate phases of geocoding. Many of the students, I believe, in the audience would be knowing the process of geocoding, where we collect the data and we go through this time-consuming process of knowing their latitude and longitude and then mapping. But using these technology, we were cutting out that intensive steps, and we could go directly to mapping. So this is where, after we got the data, we come back to the GIS platform. We can go through many GIS methods, and the ones that I've used are not very fancy here. We just use the ones that are available in our toolbox. We have used buffer analysis, point density analysis, and we created activity spaces like the one I have on the top left here. So this is one of my participants. For confidentiality, I cannot use their name, so I'm using their study ID, and all these are also approximate location. My university will not allow me to show the exact location for privacy and confidentiality issues. So when I collected all their activity locations, and I've broadly, for the purpose of this presentation, are broadly divided into two groups, social and cultural and healthcare, and we have demarcated this as a neighborhood versus this. So this person belonged to the Ward 7 in Washington, D.C. So in the previous studies, we could have said, this is my neighborhood for this particular person. But I'm saying, no, I hardly go to these parts of the wards here. Rather, I go to other wards or other areas where I'm doing more activities, and that becomes my exposure area, and that becomes my neighborhood. So this is an example, just a schematic diagram for one participant, and this is where I have overlaid all these different kinds of activity spaces for each of my study participants. And for the purpose of presentation here, I think I've done some selected activity spaces here just to make it more for you guys to understand the map properly. As you can see, some have very short or a small area in terms of the neighborhood. Some have very long, very big ones, so which means whatever happening here in terms of exposure, we need to calculate that as well. We cannot only restrict to the Washington, D.C. area. These were some of the limitations that the previous research were there when we only looked into the static neighborhoods, the administrative units, rather going to these dynamic way of understanding our neighborhoods. With the drug use data that we collected and the areas that we did binge drinking, which are some of the risk factors of the HIV transmission, we were also able to map out some of these hotspots. And this is also was mentioned in the previous talk about the disease mapping. So with this use of connected technology, these disease mapping can be very sophisticated, very cool, and it could give very interesting looking maps as well. So these new frontiers and opportunities definitely opens up new ways of thinking. As I've been mentioning in my slides here, it gives us dynamic, much more realistic. When you ask yourself, what is your neighborhood? Do you say that which pin code or which block area? Perhaps you move from 2 blocks versus 1 block. So it is really dynamic, and it kind of differs from topic to topic how you are measuring or defining your neighborhood or your environment. But along with that, it comes with some challenges as well. And that's the part I always try to say. It's not only good things, but there are some caveats as well. So it's big data. I had tons of data here. My sample size was around 150 participants. So each participant had all these data points. So it is very important to have good training, good programming, good programming GI skills to actually make sense of this big data. And then when we make these apps run, we also have to be very careful how to do the testing each time. because these are also expensive studies, you do not want to cut down time on this initial testing phases when you have to test and test, do much more pilot studies, and then be very sure of your data of what you're collecting. It's very hard to go back and change when you've already started your study. Then you have issues with the accuracy, validity, missing data. Some of the times we know, the cell service doesn't work. And we have seen that in our cell phone usage. So sometimes we need to be also aware of some of this missing data that can arise. And sometimes it could be too much for our participants. Now we had, we gave a lot of incentives in terms of their healthcare, in some the time that were given to us. We had some small monetary incentives as well, which were all issued and approved by our university. But it still could be too much burden on our study participants to answering all these questions on the cell phones all the time. So all these needs to be kept into account when we talk about the usage of these technology. So a balance between the exciting features and the balance between the challenge is the way to move forward. So with that, I'm going to go to my next example study here, which is about urban greenery. Now, in geography, urban greenery plays a very important role. It could mitigate urban heat island. It could be a way of doing our physical exercises. It could be a part of the regional planning of a city. It could be part of the whole characteristics of a landscape. So urban greenery is a dominant part in our geographic research, and how can we measure that? So that's what I have for the this part of the talk here. Now here is let me see if I can go to a website here. This was an interesting study done by a group of researchers where they compared or correlated income inequality from space. So they correlated income inequality with the greenness of the neighborhood. So the greenness of the neighborhood was a proxy variable for their income inequality. Or in other words, people who with higher income would be living in neighborhoods which are much more greener. And we can see some examples here. I've taken some of the screenshots from that research. This is in Oakland in California, where this top remote sensing image, you can see less greenery. And this area, West Oakland, is high population of minority population. Then you have the Piedmont, where you have much higher greenery, and you can see, and this is the area where you have higher population with higher income. Same goes in the Chicago area, Woodland, Hyde Park. You can see distinct less greenery and the more greenery here. If I come back to Delhi here, you can see Karol Bagh and Greater Kailash. Maybe I didn't take a very good screenshots here, but you can still see some differences here. More comes when you see Paharganj versus CR Park. I tried to find some images from Kolkata and its surrounding areas, but it was not coming out that well. But many of you, if you think of where you live, I can see I grew up in North Calcutta, near Bethune College and that Shambazar area. There's hardly any greenery. We were not even allowed to go out that often to play around, and it was dense, high population. When we moved, you can see some of the southern Calcutta residential neighborhood. You see much more greenery there. You have much more parks, and you can see the differences there. So urban greenery here in this study was used as a proxy for income and to see income measure in income inequality. Urban greenery over the years has also expanded its definition. It has included woodlands, parks, street squares, and whatnot. And remote sensing has been the dominant way of measuring urban greenery. And it's still very dominant, widely used, and pretty good. But it has some limitations which this newer technology can allow to overcome those limitations. So some of you might be familiar with the remote sensing, and remote sensing take this top and overhead view, as you can see from these images here. As if you are looking down. But realistically, when we walk beside a park or inside a park, we don't look down. We enjoy the greenery at our street level, or what we can see, what we can sense. This street level view or street level measurement is not possible by the remote sensing we have right now. And this is where Google Street View images plays a very important role. And in one of my research that I published with my student, is what we are trying to see is to give a realistic measurement of this urban greenery the way we see in our eye length, in our view. It's not an overview or the bird's eye view. So this Google Street View images was first introduced in 2007. It's a free online service featured in Google Maps and Google Earth. It's got immense library of video footages, a big data set, and you cannot do that with the desktop ArcGIS. So you have to have a programming skill to get all those data. And this GSV, the Google Street View images, creates what feels like a seamless tour of a city streets, and it can give you that street level view of the feeling of the urban greenery. There are some limitations, and I'm going to talk about in my later slides, but let's look at some of the advantages first. So it gives this panoramic view. So it gives you, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 6 images at any one given time, and you can stitch those images together, and it produces a panoramic view around a point in what you have around you. And it has got several features or parameters that we could play it around. For example, the size, like pixel size, the location, which is the latitude and longitude. Then you have this field of view or horizontal field of view. So if you stand at a location and you look right and left, how wide you can see, and that is allowed 120 degrees. Then you have heading, which goes from 0 to 360. Like if you're looking like standing here, going all around, so that is also different features of this Google Street View. And then you have the pitch, how you move up and down your head. So all these things are captured in the Google Street View, and the way you play around with the size, the pitch, the heading, you see different images. You can bring them all together and make a complete panoramic view of what you have around. And this can be used in neighborhood identification as well. How does the neighborhood around looks like, and what are the features we have? So not only open green space, this technique can be used in other measurement, other features as well. So what we did with this data, and I'm going to give you an example from the Hartford, which is the city of Connecticut where my university is located. This is the state, this is the town, and this is So me and my student, we did sampled a ton of locations along the roads, which when I mean by sample, I mean giving these latitude and longitude locations where we will capture or where we will collect this Google Street View images from. So we did that pretty good representative samples in a city. These are some of the industrial areas where people don't live, people don't go that often. So we kept out these areas. So we did the sampling process. We went through all these things, collected the image collection from the Google Street View archives. We passed this Google API and we collected a ton of images. These are mostly done by my students. They are much more savvier than me nowadays with all these methods. So I kind of gave them the overview research design here. And in the step 2, we did all this image processing here. We took one single image, gone through all this process, did all this calculation, and we calculated this green view index for each of these points. For these slides, I went pretty fast because I think if you read the papers, which I'm happy to share at the end of my talk, the audience will grasp these methods much better if as I don't go through these formulas in a talk. But you get the idea. I did all these steps, calculated the green view index for each of these locations, and you can get all the details of these methods from these 2 publications here. And then we had this green view index, which is what we wanted to calculate in terms of the open green space as an improved way than the old remote sensing methods that we typically use. So each of these points has a value, and we kind of did a point mapping here to show this range of green view index. And the map on the left is our age-old choropleth map, where we calculated the groups, the areas. This is the census tracts here. The census tract is I would say equivalent to a district, or maybe a little smaller in size than the administrative unit in India. So you have these red areas where you have, this red area you have less green index, and in the green areas you have the higher green index value. This is the realistic picture. So when you have a green view index of say around 41, what does it mean? You can see more of the green trees here. In the 30, as you can see, the greenness is going down. When you come to 6.3 categories, you hardly see any greenery happening. You see more barren and not much of greenery. So that's how these numbers of this green view value index are interpreted in terms of the pictures here. So moving on from the state of Connecticut, we did for some other cities in the United States, like the Detroit, we did for Boston, we did for Washington, D.C., we did for Philadelphia. And this is a big project that my student, who is currently in another university now in an assistant professor position, he is building up a big lab on the basis of this. He's calling that as a tripodia, a tree Wikipedia, where all of these measures and data are available for public. So what did new frontiers and new opportunities we derived by using the Google Street View images? So it's different from the traditional green metrics derived from the remotely sensed imagery with this overhead view, because as humans, we really don't feel our greenery around us from this overhead. We actually feel it from our around it, like the way we move our head, and which is the more realistic way the Google Street View images are captured. It's a profile view. It is publicly accessible, has a data point. So that opens up this whole new area for geospatial analysis, because it gives us latitude and longitude. All GIS people, all the health geographers can be very excited with all this mapping data, and they could map out the way we did it for all these cities. Again, going back to that mapping. And it also gave us space and time, because you could have temporal green view index, especially in some of the cities in parts of the world where you have distinct four seasons. You can see how the green view would look like in winter season, which is absolutely gray, which for the city I live in right now, it is really gray, all the leaves have gone, versus what would the greenery would look like in the summer. So this really gives this opportunity to have a temporal measurement, which kind of lacks in our remotely sensed techniques. There are a lot of challenges as well, because I think it is also useful to talk about some of these issues and the challenges. Google Street View images is publicly available and easily available if you know the know-how around it in the United States and some of the other Western countries. Unfortunately, for a lot of security measure, Indian government has not done the Google Street View images in that extent like the other countries. It was very hard for me to collect some of the images around Delhi because a lot of security issues. It was relatively easier for the Calcutta areas, but still the coverage is very sporadic. And this could be true for some of the African countries as well. So it is really dependent on the coverage of the Google as a company. And I think that is a serious challenge. But in terms of understanding a method of how you could use with these connected technologies is still very exciting. But there are some challenges when you use these images, especially for the coverage and the security measure. Do I have time to go for other talks, or am I going over my time?
Devachana, you are, it is now 7:50 Indian time. So we have another speaker after us. So if you could, conclude.
Sure. I was hoping that I was hitting my limit. So I would conclude my talk here, and maybe when we all able to see each other again, it would be another webinar when I'm visiting Calcutta. That's where I could give a talk about these. So I just want to one more minute. I want to acknowledge my students here, without whom these researches wouldn't have been possible. And I want to talk about my lab, which is I have named it as a spatial analysis of health issues. And these are all my students, and that's my contact information. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the other presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Devachana, for the very interesting and very cutting edge research and the talk that we were privileged to witness. Again, like I mentioned, since we are on a very tight schedule, we'll be taking all the questions collectively at the end. So we'll be moving on to our last speaker. Our last speaker today is Ms. Snigdha Banerjee. Snigdha has completed her Master's in Geography from Lady Brabant College in 2015. Further, she holds a master's degree and an MPhil degree in Population Studies from International Institute of Population Studies, Mumbai. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD in Population Studies, Mumbai. Her field of research is migration, especially focusing on international and internal migration. Currently, she is working on Gulf return migration in Murshidabad district of West Bengal. Snigdha, you can present, you could deliver your talk now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me in this webinar, and I completely feel privileged, and blessed to part of this webinar. And as you said that I completed my master degree from this, and so it's a great opportunity for me to present in this platform something real, an upcoming emerging topic. So let me share my screen. Yeah. It is visible?
No, ma'am.
No, it's not visible.
Actually, it is not showing in my laptop also. One second.
Have you pressed
Yeah,
the
yeah,
share
yeah,
button?
yeah, 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 yeah. Now it's visible.
No.
Not yet. Yeah,
Ah,
now it
yes,
is. Now it is coming
yes,
on.
yes.
Yeah. So thank you once again, and very good evening to all of you. Now, as a ma'am said that I'm doing my PhD from International Institute for Population Sciences in Mumbai. So my there Professor Bandopadhyay and Ghosh ma'am, they are like elaborately said all this topic about this COVID and 19 and this health the the health facilities and health systems. So, but I am talking about the impact of COVID-19 on migrant workers in India. So, and I'll be discuss about the impact on migrants worker and how they difficulties and hardship they are facing during this lockdown time and pandemic time, and what are the government's plan of action to mitigate these situations or control over this. And before this, I'll be touching a little bit of migration scenario so that we can get some number and to know the reasons for migrations, and then the rate of the internal and international migrations. So coming to the introduction part, so as we all know, and it is very evident from the past history that the Indian cities like Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai, they are all suffered from several types of pandemics, and COVID-19 is one of them, and nothing new. And also these cities are the second home to these migrants workers. Migrants are very much attracted to these cities for the betterment of their futures and livelihood, and they are like, and also other things, if this city is having some problem or went to something wrong with this, so this is directly hit on their livelihood and migrants futures also. So in destinations, migrants are engaged in 3D jobs, but and feeling double burden of being poor and migrants also. And in origin places also, they have stigmatized as and pointed out as like they are like potential carrier of the diseases. So and it is because of they don't have the access of social security scheme, and because they are like lacking behind of social identity and residential proof. So in that way they are lacking behind, and we and the like government have to protect them and protect their right in terms of social, economic and political. So and yeah, so sudden eruptions of this migration crisis due to this outbreak of COVID-19 again reminds us how the matter is important to us, and we have to look forward this and to protect the migrants as a whole. Yeah. So coming to this pandemic and lockdown stages, like we all know that pandemic has been started from China, and it just spread all over the world, and it's devastated the world economic and health scenario. So if we talk about the Indian case, so like first COVID case was started in Kerala in 30th January was found out, and so in that like mid February and March, so government took the initiative to impose the lockdown. So and lockdown is the only one option to like mitigate this problem. And so 25th March to 31st May, continuously 2 months lockdown India has faced. And at that time, all border were sealed and transportation got stopped and factories and all these are shut down. And where the migrants are mostly like involved in these sectors, like the mostly migrants are involved in informal sectors in these cities. So suddenly they, and within very short period of notice, and suddenly they are like homeless, they are like jobless and foodless. So this pandemic and lockdown is brought turmoil in the lives of migrants, and it devastated their future as well as the present scenario. Now, with this context, my main objective is to analyze the migration trend on the basis of the available data. And for this, I have used census D series in 2001 and 11 data. And the second objective is like to explore the challenges faced by the migrant workers due to this ongoing pandemic. And the third is like what are the policies and programs run by the government to control over these situations. Now come to this first part of my studies. Like this map, this table is showing the interstate rate of the interstate and intrastate migrations in 2001 and 11. So in one, we could see that 268 million populations have like more prone to migrated in intrastate regions, and on the other hand, in 2011, the rate is continuously increasing, and it like from 268 to in 2011 that it is like 395 million populations are going for these intrastate migrations. And in the case of intrastate, it is again increased in 2011, like that is the number is 54 million populations is inclined towards this intrastate migrations. And if we talk about the growth rate, so like in intrastate, we can see there's a 47% of migrations is followed the intrastate migration, and in terms of intrastate, that is this is that 31%. Now coming this table, like this table mainly presents the stream-wise migrations, like what were the streams are most important for the migration. In the case of intrastate, we can found the major stream is like rural to urban. People are mainly followed to the rural to urban migration stream. On the other hand, like 22% people are mainly followed the rural to rural. So mainly in the case of the interstate, there's a rural to rural and rural to urban migration stream is very much predominant. And if we talk about the intrastate case, then the mostly the 51% of migrants are mainly followed the rural to rural. So this so in the case of the intrastate, the rural to rural migration stream is very much predominant. Now come to the reasons for this migrations. Now here I have taken 4 reasons like work, education, family, and others. So I have clubbed business related migrations with work, and in the family related migration I have taken marriage, moved at birth, and moved with the household. We can see that in the case of intrastate, more male are prone to these work-related migrations. On the other hand, intrastate, like female are more prone to the family-related migrations. Yeah. So come to this second table, like here I have taken the metropolitan cities of India and their populations, and we can see that the each of these cities having more populations of migrants. So they all like on an average they have more than 40% of the migrant population. And I have taken here the 10th December active cases, COVID-19 active cases. So we can understand that like the cases also very much high in those metropolitan cities. So altogether they have shared 62% of the total active cases on that day in India. So from there we can understand like the how migrant population is like vulnerable in those metropolitan areas where the migrant is like number of migrant is very high, and on the other hand the COVID cases is very also very high. Now in map also showing that the same result. Now the first map I have taken 17th May cases, and the second map I have taken the 10th December. Like it's like 6-month gap, but the still result is same. So like the red zone is mainly showing the hotspot, and it is basically lies on the metropolitan areas. And we can see that the metropolitan areas like which in Kolkata, Chennai, Pune, Maharashtra, in Mumbai, so they are the like center of the epidemic and center of this migrants populations also. Now come to my second stage of my studies, like struggle faced by migrant workers during this COVID. And I think like during this COVID time, the migrant population is only one group of population, those who have suffered a lot. And a lot like they have suffered multiple problems, multiple hardships, because the factories and workplaces are all the shut down, and they are like instantly they are like jobless, and they are forced to work simply just working. They are forced to return back to their home and with their no means of transportation. So and so we can see that they have to live in a small room with like unsanitary conditions, and the social distancing is the one measure, key measures, but they don't have that option to maintain at least social distancing. Yeah. So there's no means of transportation, and in that way they lost their jobs, they lost their livelihood, and in that time also the unemployment rate is continuously increases. Now, if we talk about the livelihood of the migrant during this COVID-19, so ILO, one of the reports says that the 70 to 75% of migrants are involved in informal sectors like contractor, then cleaner, waiter, this kind of things. So these all sectors, informal sectors, have got stopped in this and shut down in this pandemic, and and it is directly affect their economic status of the migrant also. And as per Center of Monitoring Indian Economies says that the urban unemployment rate continuously increases from 9.4% to 25% in May 2020. So lockdown it affect them badly, and also it affect directly affect their nutrition intake of their children, migrant children, and also the food intake. So on an average, they affect their future as well as the present conditions of the migrant workers. Now we can also say that the migrant have faced the problem in three phases. Like when the pandemic has started and lockdown has started, when they stayed in their destinations, there they also faced problem related with food, shelter, and loss of job, loss of wages, and fear of getting infected and anxiety. And then they decided to like move back to their origin, and in that travel time also they faced hardship and some like hunger and accident, and some have committed suicide also. And when they are like reached their destination place, like origin place, they are also have to stay in isolation, and also they are like very much stigmatized and well get well ill treatment from their natives also. So one study, 2020, John has did, and did a telephonic survey with more than 3,000 migrants, and it is basically based on North Central India. And the result shows that the 42 were left with no ration, no money, etc. And one third of the population, migrant population, is stuck into their destination cities with no access of food and money. And another study shows that, led by this Action India group, and shows that 81% of informal workers, more than migrant workers, are lost their jobs, and 48% did not receive any wages in that time. So, what are the government plan of actions to mitigate this situation? Now, come to this to mitigate these challenges and overcome these challenges, government mainly focus on three sectors, like uh, immediate arrangement for the basic needs and health facilities and social protections for those low-ended worker and marginalized worker as migrant workers. And secondly, the government focused on generation of employment in return of for the return migrants in the place of origin, and also encouraging the return migrants to return to their destination so that economy can grow faster way. So now I will discuss about the programs and policy. So the main program is launched by Government of India, like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana on 26th March, and it mainly announced 170 lakh crore package. And under this package, they provided 5 kilos of wheat and rice and preferred pulses, and 8 crore migrants are benefited out of that. And so another program is like central governments also gave an order to the state government to use the building and construction workers welfare fund, that is 52,000 crores. Yeah. So till 31st March 2020, 6.6 lakh migrants are like accommodated with various relief camps where they provided all the basic amenities also. Now, several states like Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Haryana, and also West Bengal did one-time passport income support to the migrant workers, and 1,000 rupees are credited to their Jan Dhan account bank. And also one major program is like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana. It is mainly 125 working days, and they mainly allocated those states where the net return migrants rate is high, like Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Odisha. So these states are implemented this program. Now another major program is like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So it is mainly provided accommodations and quality accommodations and security to migrant populations, and encourage this migrant population to not return to their native places in this crisis like COVID, if it is come again in the future. And also One Nation's One Ration Card also initiated, so that migrant can avail their PDS from anywhere of India. And another major yojana launching the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So the main motto is to revival these manufacturing sectors, and especially to these origin places, so that employment to create a more employment in origin place. And also Vande Bharat mission, as we all know that the Vande Bharat mission also started, and to bring back those international migrants, those who were stuck in different countries like USA, UK, and Gulf countries also. And and special Shramik train also launched, and Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, these states are like arranges special buses for this migrant worker to drop them in their respective borders. So in conclusion, we can see that the lockdown created a chaotic state, and many people, many like government says that lockdown is the only one options to mitigate these situations or to control these situations. But unplanning lockdown like this, it is just hamper the migrants' lives. And COVID and this scenario is like basically is a eye opener thing, and is like visible the migration and migrant in the policy eyes of the policymakers. So mainly, and we also know that and you can feel the government has imposed many of the plans, and basically they have emphasized in the four sectors like direct cash transfer, free food distributions, employment creations, and social security. So one thing which we should also do that to strengthen the migration data. Although the census and NSSO gives us and provide us some data about this migration, but the data is too old. So we have to strengthen this migration data so that government can directly contact and directly keep track on these migrants. Yeah. So on that note, I would like to end my presentation here. And thank you for being your support and patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Snigdha, for your talk. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Snigdha, for your lovely presentation. And now I think we can go to our questions. And is Professor Bandyopadhyay here? Devasri, is Professor Bandyopadhyay? Devasri? Devasri, is Professor Bandyopadhyay here?
He has just left the meeting. I think there is some network issue with him.
Okay.
He'll just join. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I will go on to the question for Devachana, which I have only asked. That is, Devachana, what I've come to understand from your research that you had a lot of fun, right? You had a very, very, you had a lot of funds. You had a very fat purse, and you could dip into it, and you could distribute people cell phones to people, and you could also give them a cell phone plan as well. Now, I mean, that's what I wanted to ask. So, what is the cost efficiency of such GIs-related interventions in community health, especially in a country like India, where there is a very high burden of HIV positive cases? So, I mean, it would obviously, it is an immense, it would really help governments to intervene and to make sure that they take their antiretroviral medicines and and to manage these patients. But what is the cost efficiency of such methods, especially in a developing country like India, where funds might really, really be very, very less? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we actually also have to think about the cost efficiency in the US as well. So we taken into consideration. So this was a pilot study. So we were able to give them the cell phone. So we were trying to see whether this is feasible at all when we roll out the whole intervention, if it is successful, if it is higher efficacy. So when we did the pilot study, the cost efficiency was not the main factor. We wanted to see whether if we put in all the funds and we put in all the intervention and the public health and the research part, does it actually give good results? If it gives good results, and that's what we are analyzing now, then we would have to team up with an implementation science group, which is another specialized group, where we would see how we could bring the cost down. For example, and in terms of India, everybody has phone. Everybody has smartphones who can at least receive some messages, either through WhatsApp, either through Signal, which is the new thing now, or with the SMS messages. So if we don't buy them the phones, buying them the phones was just part of this experiment that we were trying to do. We do not have to buy the phones; they already have the plan. So for the COVID, you can see that there were a lot of messages were sent around. These are called the public service announcements, the PSS. So you could actually send out one message to entire population of the phone who has phone, and it has been shown that it's pretty cost effective using phones and WhatsApps and all these apps to send out health intervention messages in large amount. And there are a lot of studies has been done in Africa as well, which has got a low resource setting environment. And there has been a lot of success in that kinds of intervention. Now, in terms of collecting data through phones, that is still an open area, and probably a lot of discussion needs to happen whether it's cost effective or not. So point one, and point two, it also depends upon which population we are giving these opportunities of using cell phones. Even in the United States, it was a problem for this population because we had an incentive for them to give back the phone. Otherwise, this population was drug users and HIV, so they had a flashy phone at their hand, which probably costed at least $30 or less, so they could sell it and buy those drugs too. So those possibilities were there. So all this were taken care of by our university and things like that, and we just wanted to see if we put in the money, would the results happen. If the results come out positive, then we have to scale it back and see whether we could use their phones and then send these messages. So to make it easier, we gave out the phone, but in real life, and when we scale up these interventions, we would hardly not give out those phones. And if we're not giving out those phones, then the cost of the study really goes down. There's not much of cost there. Hope I was able to answer your question to some extent.
Yes, Debarchana, thank you. Does anybody else have a question for?
Yes, Debarchana, I would ask you one question. That is, how far this smart technologies, even in the United States, would help in formulating a holistic, public health policy? Would it be very
Holistic public health
effective?
policy?
Would it be faster and quicker?
It would
Yes,
be,
yes.
because in terms of communication, it is a very easy way to reach out to a large population. So in the United States, this whole individualized taking care of people, it's very expensive because you have to hire health workers, you have to hire case managers, and people involved is a lot of money. Even simple plumbing is a huge cost. So this service charges to people is a huge amount. So if you can cut down case managers, if you can cut down personalized health, social workers, and send out these messages in a volume, it is very effective. But the studies needs to be careful to see what is the content of the messages, the frequency of the messages, because otherwise it will just end up in our delete boxes. So this is where many of the health communications researchers are working, how to communicate. And that was also part of our study, which I didn't talk about. It's a big study that we involved our social network, like our friends and family members, to give us reminder to take our medicine, because it's very cheap. We don't pay our friends to be helpful in our life, or our partners, or our parents. But we don't know whether it will work. Especially for HIV, which has got a lot of taboo and a stigma, we might not even disclose to that. But in terms of other health programs like obesity, or say bullying or mental health, which is a big issue in the United States, these kind of health outcomes can be taken care of by these technologies and communications and these methods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I can see questions here for Dr. Professor Bandyopadhyay, but is Professor Bandyopadhyay here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Can you listen to me? I'm here.
Yes, sir. So, yes, sir, you're audible. You're audible. So, Ankuna Nath, she asks, how does the natural immunity level vary among different ethnic groups? Sir, could you hear the question?
I think he has a
Professor Bandyopadhyay, could you hear my question?
Yes, actually, this was cracked. You know, I could only listen the question and name who was asked the question, but the question was cracked.
Oh,
Please, sorry.
okay. And
Sorry,
there is
if you
another
can
question.
repeat.
Okay, I will
Repeat the question.
Yes, sir.
Repeat, please repeat.
How does the natural immunity level vary among different ethnic groups?
Okay, shall I go with this question, or you just go for all the questions and I can give the answer all together? That would be best, because every question has some kind of association with the other question, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir. There's another question from Mr. Mridul Bormon, and he's asking, is different ethnic people natural immunity change through migration? I think
that's a problem. Change through
migration, where the natural immunity changes through migration in different ethnic peoples.
Yes.
Sir, yes, sir. I can see these two questions here. So you could pick on both of them, and if anybody else has any question, can also ask now.
Thank you so much. Can I go with the responding?
Yes,
with these two questions, and in the meantime, if the other question comes up, definitely I'll come up. And this is really interesting that people have listened me very carefully. That's why this question comes up. My point is this, that yes, every population has some kind of, I said, innate immunity. So that innate immunity is there definitely with the other population, with this population, because I have already mentioned about that one AC1 gene and DD allele and one II allele inserted and deleted allele. So if you go to the northeastern region and eastern part of India, there is much more II allele, and why in the DD alleles are much more there in the northwestern part of India, and that is only with the migrations. If you think about the Indian situation, so what we will find in the northeastern part, basically quote unquote the peoples are Mongoloid. And if you go to the northwestern part of India, basically people, if you see the morphology, the people having some kind of similarity with the Caucasian population, like European population. So definitely the immunity levels are different, because sometimes you know about the lactase intolerance, like milk in the sugar. So the thing is some people can digest that milk, so some people doesn't like. So this is again an interesting point that people are working on this selection level. So definitely that immunity sometimes we get through the metabolism factors which you can metabolize. So definitely again I'm telling you that there are differences in the population with the immunity level. That's why I said the genes that takes the medicine. If you don't have the genes to recept, there sometimes vaccine fails. So this is number one. And number two is this, somebody asked me a very interesting question, if there is a mixing or not. Yes. So if there is migration, so for example, somebody has married to other ethnic groups, which is going on, it is happened to be at least in case of the human. So definitely different kind of immunity structures are coming up, and which we say this is an ancestral character and the derived character. For example, I have given the example of the hair form. You know, if you go to the chimps, our very closest ancestor, you will find there is no different form of hair. Like they have only the straight hair from head to toe, but we have localization of hair from the scalp hair to localization of hair, and we have different forms of hair in the scalp. So if you go to the Africa, you will get the different kind of hair form. If you come to the China, different kind of hair form. If you come to India, you will find different kind of hair form. So definitely these hair forms, when you just think over a particular population or a person from Egypt, you will find the hairs are different like the Africans, and the skin color is like the Europe. Because if you think about Egypt, so there Egypt is in Africa, but very vicinity to the Europe. So definitely you will find this kind of changes, and that is a very interesting feature for anthropology. Am I given a satisfied answer? I do not know really. That's a problem in the online. If this is happened to be an offline.
Yes, if that would have its own set of.
I do not know. I have responded correctly or satisfied. Okay, fine. Thank you. Mridul Barman, yes, sir. Effective answer. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Does anybody have a question for Dr. Bandyopadhyay? You can just either unmute yourself and speak out, or you can put it in the chat box. Okay.
Are they happy?
So we are very happy.
Thank you so much.
I have
Because for myself, I'm telling you, the people has listened me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, somebody tried.
Yes.
Someone tried. I could not listen carefully.
I have a question.
Thank you.
for
Please
Snigdha.
go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I have a question for Snigdha.
Okay, not for me. Fine.
Yes.
So I'm putting off my video and audio.
Signa, great topic, great work. How far are you along with your PhD?
Ma'am, it's like
So are you
1 year
thinking of,
left.
are you thinking of
And
doing
then about
some surveys with the
Yes.
migrant workers to add to your
Yes, ma'am.
secondary analysis with
Yes, ma'am. I love to do that. Yes, ma'am. So, is there any opportunity for this?
Pardon me?
So, is there any opportunity for this, like to do some survey on these cities?
Where?
Some other countries and all.
Let's, if you're interested, let's talk about that offline. Shoot me an
Yes,
email. That would be a longer discussion. Yeah.
Yes, I'll get back to
Yeah.
you further. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Since there isn't any other question here, I will ask Professor Shashwati Mukherjee to deliver the vote of thanks.
I don't think ma'am
Network connection is gone, is it? Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
I'm
Yes,
audible,
ma'am.
but am I visible also? Okay, okay, okay. We have at last come to an end of a very long session on various aspects of health.
Ma'am, you've become muted again. You have to unmute yourself.
I guess Shashwati has left and trying to join again. I guess so.
Okay.
Yes, yes, sir. She's not there.
Yeah, she will join, I guess. I have informed Professor Mukherjee and she is joining.
Rajashree? Hello?
Yes, Debarshana.
Yes, so I have to be going to another meeting now. It's just 10 a.m. for me. So unfortunately, I'll have to leave.
Thank you, Debarshana. Thank you for taking out the time out of your very busy schedule. And because your topic is very new, it's a very new and a very cutting edge thing. So we've all been very privileged to have heard. And I'm sure our students are also listening and they will also take away a lot from your talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Dr. Mukherjee is here again. She has joined.
Okay.
Yes.
Audible?
Yes,
Am I
you're
audible?
audible. You're audible, ma'am.
Okay. Since we have lost a lot of time, this is the time to express our gratitude for all the speakers. So on behalf of the Advanced Research Center in Human Geography and also on behalf of the Postgraduate Department of Geography, Lady Brabourne College, I extend my thanks to all the three speakers, to Professor Bandyopadhyay, to Dr. Debarchana Ghosh, and also Ms. Snigdha Banerjee for their thoughtful insights and for their deliberations in the webinar. And they have touched multiple points and which have enriched our participants, the students and teachers both. And also I extend my thanks to our technical support, Richa, for the success. And also I definitely express my gratitude to Professor Shuli Sarkar for her wonderful welcome address. And we hope that this would be very beneficial for our researchers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Richa?
We are going to...
Thank you so much for giving me this honor and opportunity. Looking forward again for having a discussion. Thank you so much. I'm privileged and honored.
Yes, sir. We shall be seeing you very often because you also teach our students. We have the pleasure of having you as having guest lectures from you. So thank you so much, sir, for your time as well. Sir, now we will conclude our webinar, and a feedback form has been sent in the chat box. So kindly fill up the feedback form and submit it so that you can get your certificate. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Students. Connection again got lost.
No, sir. No, ma'am, your connection is there.
Yes. Rajashree, we have come to an end. So please tell the students also, those who have to fill the feedback forms.
Yes, ma'am, I've informed all the participants that they have